Hello, how are you? How is Linda? Hi. Oh, God. What happened? She cheated on me. What? Yeah. I felt like Linda and I had the best relationship. We were friends and brought so much positivity to each other's lives. We actually go way back. We've known each other since we were kids, and we were romantically involved throughout our last 2 years of high school. Plus, we were each other's first partner, so there was definitely a unique connection between us. At least that's what I thought. As you know, we got married a few years after we finished university. We were doing really well financially. And since we loved being around each other, we spent a ton of time together. We traveled to new places, ate out a lot, and every evening felt like a romantic night out. Even when we were with our friends, we were always by each other's side, never wanting to be apart. Yes, I remember. Maybe then there was a problem in bed? I'm not entirely sure. We never had problems in the bedroom, and if we had love less than 5 times a week, we considered it a bit of a dry period. I thought that we were made for each other in every sense, but apparently, only I thought so. We plan to soon expand our family and have a baby. But now, everything is in the past. I'm sorry to burden you with all of this. No, everything is fine. You have to speak up to make it easier for yourself. Can you tell me how you found out about the betrayal? On Easter morning, Linda and I volunteered at our church to hide Easter eggs around the area for the children to find later. We got dressed without taking a shower and drove to the church together. Throughout the day, we helped to hide both obvious eggs for the little ones and more hidden ones for the older kids. Linda took photos on her phone of us and other members of the congregation, and on the way to church, I was driving, but then asked her to drive us back home. After we got back, she mentioned that she was going to take a nap for a few hours. The night after, I was interested in watching the college volleyball championship game. I brought my wife's iPad, which I frequently used as if it were my own. Neither of us anticipated that anything would be visible to me. And what did you see there? To be honest, I'm not very tech-savvy, and I haven't been for a while. But as we were heading into the house, I stumbled upon an article and saw an icon in the lower right corner related to photos. Suddenly, a bunch of pictures started popping up one after the other. I'm still not sure whether my wife's phone connected to our Wi-Fi or synced with the iPad. It's all a bit confusing to me. However, I eventually realized that the pictures were the ones my wife had taken just a few minutes earlier outside the church. So I kept reading. All of a sudden, a bunch of pictures popped up, and they were rather unsettling, which was strange coming from my wife. I tried to tap on them to examine them closer, but they seemed to flash by too quickly, and weren't even saved on the iPad. I checked the photo folder on the device to see if there was anything suspicious, but I didn't find anything remotely inappropriate. It hit me that the photos my wife took at the church weren't anywhere to be found on the iPad. Despite just having seen them quickly appear, my wife headed to bed and made a quick pit stop in the kitchen to grab a bottle of water, while I observed her climbing the stairs. I couldn't shake off the feeling that she was hiding something from me, which was out of the ordinary for us. In an attempt to get some clarity, I scored through every file on the iPad, hoping to stumble upon what had caught my attention earlier. After some time, I realized that the only way to put my mind at ease was to look at my wife's phone. Oh, the most interesting is always in our phone. Yeah, so, feeling uneasy, I grabbed my wife's phone from the charging station and went to our bathroom to investigate. We had never set any restrictions on using each other's devices, so it was unusual to find that she had changed her passcode. I tried several combinations at different speeds, but it was clear that she had deliberately altered it. The realization that my wife might be hiding something from me brought tears to my eyes. I knew that there was something important that I was not aware of, and I needed to find out what it was. After retrieving my wife's phone and failing to unlock it due to a changed passcode, I returned it to the charging station in our bedroom. Although a part of me wanted to believe that I was overthinking things, and that there was nothing to worry about, The altered passcode left me feeling uneasy. At first, I even considered the possibility that what I had seen was not as inappropriate as I had initially thought, and I even chuckled at my own misjudgment. However, the suspicion that my wife was hiding something continued to nag me, and I struggled to maintain a poker face and keep my emotions hidden from someone who knew me better than anyone else. Maybe she's just more comfortable having a password to protect herself from scammers and others. I was contemplating that idea at the time. Later in the evening, I heard her receive a message, and as I witnessed her input her new passcode, I realized that my suspicion might be accurate. That night, after she had gone to bed, I took her phone and returned to the bathroom. After inputting the new passcode, I opened the folder with her photos and was astonished to see that none of them were even remotely inappropriate. As I was going through her photo collection, I came across the pictures she had clicked at church that morning, but there was nothing unusual in them. Just when I was about to leave the app, I felt the urge to search for deleted photos. As I scrolled through my wife's photos, I was shocked to discover 2 candid snapshots of her, along with a revealing picture of a man who was not me. Without hesitation, I quickly sent all 3 pictures to my own phone, and then deleted the text message and the photos from her device. After putting her phone back in its holder, I rushed to the downstairs bathroom to be as quiet as possible, and vomited as if I had just taken a dose of Ipecac. Until that moment, I had never seen either of the pictures of my wife. She was not someone who would take such photos, and to be honest, I was not particularly interested in them. I knew I would have her all to myself soon enough when the opportunity arose, and I already knew how beautiful she looked without clothes. We both thought that photos like that could have adverse effects if they fell into the wrong hands. As a couple, we were united and did not see the need to share our intimacy with anyone else. Or at least, that's what I believed. I didn't know who was in the photo, but the realization that she had a man in her gallery made me angry. I had thoughts that she might not even know this man, but thinking this way just calmed me down. I feel so bad about what is going on. That night, I cried a lot. I managed to get a few hours of sleep before work, but even sleeping in the same bed as Linda was disgusting to me. I was completely obsessed with recovering the messages from her phone, to the point where I couldn't even concentrate on my work. The idea of seeing the messages and photos she had sent was constantly on my mind. To cut a long story short, I eventually managed to recover everything, including some very explicit messages, selfies, and even photos and videos of the 2 of them together. When I finally saw all of it, it felt like my entire world had crumbled, and that everything I cared about had been destroyed. Oh my God, I understand your feelings. It's terrible. At that moment, I couldn't believe that all this horror was happening to me. I immediately realized that it was over between Linda and me. I can't continue a relationship with someone who has betrayed me. I was utterly confused and didn't know what to do next, or who to reach out to for support. I stopped crying, but I felt like I was in a daze and losing my grip on things. Eventually, I went back to work, discussed the main tasks with my colleagues, and then left for the day. I briefly considered sending all the information I had found out to both her and our families before driving off a ravine. I felt completely unable to move forward with my life. I really didn't want to confront her, to finally put an end to our marriage. This is just a nightmare. And how did you decide to act in this situation? While I was at work, I printed out all the evidence I had gathered about her infidelity, including messages, photos, and other incriminating material. I was aware that if I confronted her, she would deny everything until I presented proof, which would inevitably lead to more arguments and fighting. I didn't want any of that. In fact, I no longer wanted to see her, speak to her, or even be in her presence again. Seeing the images in particular caused any love I had for her to vanish in an instant. Got it. As soon as I entered the house, I found her sitting on the couch, absorbed in her phone. She could have been texting anyone, her mother, sister, or anyone else. But I knew it wasn't me. That day, I realized that the chances were high that she was engaged in other activities that would only cause me further pain. After noticing that I was packing, she came into the bedroom and asked if I had to go on a sudden business trip. I stopped what I was doing, looked directly at her with a stare of absolute loathing, and then continued packing without answering her question. As she came closer to me, she asked what was bothering me and put her hand on my back. I instinctively flinched away from her touch, as if I had just been touched by a rotting animal carcass crawling with maggots. I was so angry that I just started yelling obscenities at her. I wanted her to leave at that moment and not say a word to me. She kept asking me what was wrong, but then she started crying and said that I was being too aggressive with her. I pulled out a sheet of paper from the folder containing all of the evidence and handed it to her. Then I turned around and left the house. As I got into the car, she ran out and began crying, insisting that I had misunderstood everything. After I left, I just flipped her off. She wouldn't stop calling and texting me, apologizing and all that, so I decided to turn off my phone for a while. My plan was to keep her at arm's length and let my lawyer handle the divorce process. I had no interest in listening to Linda's excuses, since they wouldn't change anything anyway. Even though she was fully aware that cheating was a deal-breaker for me, she kept calling. I didn't care about her motives and booked a room at a motel about a mile away from my job. After checking in, I walked to a nearby restaurant and managed to force down some food that I didn't really want. Later, in my room, I used the motel's phone to call my mother and let her know where I was. My mother was worried because my wife had contacted her early on after I left. I inquired whether she knew the reason behind my departure, but she didn't. I proceeded to explain to her what I had uncovered, and that we would be getting a divorce. Additionally, I revealed my plans to search for employment in another state to avoid any possible encounters with Linda or her family. I implored my mother to keep this information limited to my father and siblings. My mother began weeping. "This is a very difficult moment. What about Linda? Did you see each other again after that?" "This is the most interesting moment. After talking to my mom, I was completely exhausted and eventually fell asleep, but I was suddenly woken up by a knock on my door at midnight. I reluctantly got out of bed and looked through the peephole, only to see Linda standing there, looking worried and waiting for me to let her in. I couldn't figure out how she found me, let alone which room I was in. I immediately decided that I no longer wanted to see her or cross paths with her, so I called the local police. I explained the whole situation to them, and they immediately came to my aid. I saw the police officers led Linda away from my door with a terrifying face. After they took her out of the hotel, an officer came to my door, and we talked about the situation and filled out all the necessary paperwork. After that, he left. It feels like you're recounting a movie rather than a life story. It's kind of crazy. And then what happened? The next day, I had to go to work, despite my feeling exhausted after everything that had happened. When my coworkers asked about my well-being, I simply told them that I must have been ill. When my boss arrived, I informed him of my wife's infidelity, which shocked him, but he also expressed his support for me. I then expressed my desire to work hard in the upcoming days to keep my mind occupied. He assured me that the office was available to me day and night. After work, I decided to visit my parents to discuss everything. When I arrived, my entire family was present, so I took the opportunity to recount the story of my wife's infidelity from the beginning. My sisters were shocked because Linda had contacted them and they had shown her sympathy without knowing the whole truth. I suggested that we all move on and forget about Linda, as she had shown herself to be unworthy of any attention positive or negative. I also informed them that I had decided to look for a new job in another state over the coming weeks. My mother expressed that it was unfair for me to have to leave a state where I had a job and family, but ultimately agreed that it was the best decision. I also support you, brother. Whatever solution you choose, it will be the right one for you. Thank you. I don't know whether you will support or condemn me in this aspect, but I've decided to take revenge on her. What? How on earth? When I first met my lawyer, I told him I didn't care about anything we had together. The only thing I wanted was for all the property I had acquired before marriage, all the investments to remain with me. But my lawyer was so surprised by this case. She asked me if I wanted the divorce and division of property to be fair and just, or destructive to Linda. I thought, even a week ago, I would have chosen an honest path, but then I longed for revenge. I was in so much pain all this time that I could not overcome myself and remove all emotions. We agreed with the lawyer to make this divorce as painful as possible for Linda. I wanted her to be left with nothing. Everything that I received from her burned as quickly as my feelings for her disappeared when I found out about the betrayal. I wanted to completely destroy Linda's financial position. I also tried to find out who her lover was to destroy him too. After all, the law applies to him too, since he contributed to the dissolution of the marriage. If it turned out that Linda's lover had a girlfriend or wife, I would give her all this information. As you can imagine, I wanted to make life miserable for the two of them. Don't you think it's very cruel? It would be better to just forget it and live your life. And didn't she act cruelly towards me? I just responded in kind. My lawyer even told me how the delivery of the divorce papers to my wife went. The courier delivered them directly to her workplace, to the school. He went to her class, right during the lesson, and told her and the whole class that she was being served divorce papers because of her infidelity. All the teachers and children heard about it. I was shocked by this story, but also pleased. The courier said that she just fell to the floor and began to sob in front of everyone. Apparently, she didn't expect the process to go so quickly. But I think her tears were just a show. She doesn't regret what happened. When she cheated on me, she didn't think about me. So I should not think about her during the divorce. And how did you feel after what happened? Honestly, I felt so empty inside. I think I've lost myself, lost a piece of my soul. I gave Linda all myself during our relationship, and she so ruthlessly betrayed me and our family. It seems to me that I will never be able to build a family with anyone again, because I was brought up with the belief that a woman should be alone and committed for life. You may not agree with me, and this might seem a little strange in our time, but this is my position. I believe that love in life can be found only once, and then you just have to look for similar people and try to replace them with the person you loved. As for Linda, I will never be able to get back together and build a healthy relationship with her again. I believe that if a person betrayed you once, they will betray you a second time, and a third time. And it will be a cycle of infidelity. A few weeks ago, before I found out about the betrayal, I could walk and think for hours about my wife and love for her. I could get turned on in a second at the mere sight of her. But now I don't feel anything except disgust. She's dead to me. So I decided to completely focus on work and immerse myself in my career goals. I worked for days on end and began to feel much better. I even started smiling, talking to my colleagues, and even taking on new challenges at work. I felt energized and started healing from that terrible period every day. I finally started to feel alive. But today, what happened? I moved to live in an office because I decided to save money on motels. So, when I woke up and got up from the office couch, I immediately sat down at the computer. I took my paper calendar from the table to change the date to today, and then I was speechless. Today is Linda's birthday. A year ago, this holiday was the best day of the year for me. But now, just remembering it makes me sick. I thought for a second about congratulating her, but immediately realized that she did not deserve it. Honestly, I don't know when I will finally be able to let her go and live my own life in peace. This is a very difficult period in my life, and I believe it will end soon, and my personal white life streak will finally begin. Hold on, brother. Soon everything will change for the better. Thank you.